Hello and welcome to the National Association for Court Management webinar, sponsored and presented by Tyler Technologies, Navigating the Road to Case Resolution. My name is Jeff Chappell. I'm a member of NACM's Board of Directors and serve as the Chair of the Communications Committee. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Marlon Jones. Marlon Jones is Client Success Senior Account Manager for the Municipal Justice Division of Tyler Technologies. Marlon will lead a discussion focused on the best tools and practices for municipal courts to empower citizens to take ownership of their court experience. Marlon will be joined by panel members, Sonia Cates, Municipal Court Administrator from Alvin, Texas, Jessica and Sarah, Director of Municipal Court Services from Seabrook, Texas, Tiffany Toda, Municipal Court Administrator from Victoria, Texas, Danielle Trijo, Municipal Court Administrator from Littleton County. From the moment a case lands on your docket until the final payment is received, learn how tools work together to help courts navigate and resolve cases quickly and efficiently. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. Presentation will be approximately 60 minutes long. We are recording today's webinar. The recording will be available for all attendees after the presentation and for members on NACM's website. Please take a few moments to complete a brief survey after the webinar. If you're joining the webinar today on your computer, please submit questions to the panel throughout the presentation by typing your questions in the Q&A box. We will address your questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If we are unable to address all your questions, we will email them out with responses following the webinar. If you're attending the webinar by telephone, you may email your questions to nacm@nacmnet.org. After the webinar, your questions will be answered. I would like to turn it over and welcome Marlon.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Hello, everyone. Today, our objective is to share best practices and different ways our courts are turning to technology to help lighten their day-to-day court responsibilities. Here's a little something about me. According to my standout assessment, my greatest value to our team is I am a pioneer. I am great at pulling a group of people together that are able to create new and exciting things. According to Mr. Buckingham, I know how to find the right mix of skills and experience to get the job done. So let me wow you today with the right mix of 4 of our municipal justice super rock star court leaders that are joining me this afternoon. As I introduce each panelist, I will share with you their instinctive strengths that aids them in giving an edge at all of the many great things they do each and every day. I'll start with Sonia. Sonia is from the city of Alvin, Texas, as Jeff mentioned. Sonia's greatest value to her team is she is a connector. Once she sets her mind to it, she starts a chain reaction. Sonia has such a strong impact in her community, and every person she talks to, she leaves us all in a better place. Next is Tiffany. Tiffany is from the city of Victoria, Texas. Tiffany is an influencer. She has a gift for getting people to join her movement or whatever movement she's going out to face. If you know Tiffany, you know that she is a mover and shaker in her court and community. She knows exactly how to rally the troops to get things done. Also joining us today is Jessica, and she is from the city of Seabrook, Texas. She is an amazing teacher. Jessica is adamant about getting everyone that she is around. She makes them feel powerful, and she's not afraid to let people try it and see. She not only pushes herself, but those around her to dive into the deep end. And last, but definitely not least, joining me today is Danielle Trijo. First and foremost, she's the only one on our panel today that has the coolest temperatures. She's coming in, joining us from Littleton, Colorado. The thing about Danielle is she's a connector. And if you talk to any person that knows her, they will all say the exact same thing. Danielle feels successful when others feel successful. She is devoted to helping others expose their strengths and to expose things that we didn't even know we were capable of doing. She is the hub that's linking all of us at our core. I want to welcome all of the ladies here, and I want to say thank you. And as I mentioned, they are some super rock stars. So If we're ready, we'll go ahead and start asking some of the questions. I'm going to start with Sonia today. So Sonia, I often hear that going paperless is costly and overwhelming from a lot of our different courts and different people that I talk to. How challenging was it really for you to go from having case files to a paperless environment?
Honestly, looking back, it wasn't as challenging as I originally thought. I thought, oh my gosh, what is this going to look like for me, for my staff, for my judges, my prosecutor? So it was a little overwhelming at first to even put thought into it. But looking back, I think there's a misconception of when you go paperless, that it's going to be difficult, it's going to be challenging, it's going to be hard. But that wasn't the case. After we dove into it and started preparing, we realized it wasn't as challenging as we originally in our minds had put in. I think the hardest part and the only challenge I could look back and see was me not having a case file in my hand. So breaking a habit was probably, honestly, the only challenge. One thing that looking back, I'm glad we did was we did it in stages. We took, what was our goal? What did we want to achieve at the end? So doing it in phases, keeping our staff involved, our IT manager being involved in the process was a big part of it. So it wasn't really as challenging as I originally thought.
Yeah. So, I think what some of our folks are wanting, let's dig a little deeper. What are some of the technologies that you're using to make your court a paperless environment?
Some of the technology that we utilize here is, of course, we have Tilent Content Manager. That is a must for us. That is the best way to go. Of course, having signature pads, the bright scanners, I know all scanners are the same, but there's certain ones that I favor that I like. So in addition to, of course, we have virtual court. Having queues set up within your software, if you have that capability, queues is a real big part of this, where the judge can review orders, and so we can remain paperless environment. And in addition to, we do have outside vendors that we utilize. We have Video Magistrate, we have Seamless Docs, and so that helps us continue on being a paperless environment.
Awesome. Now, I know that there's some things that you're mentioning that people may want some additional information about. So at the end, you can ask additional questions. We'll answer what we can, whatever we can answer right now. We'll definitely follow up or connect you with the right people. So thank you, Sonia. I know that we'll circle back to you to ask a few more questions, but I want to dive on over and ask Miss Tiffany down in Victoria, Texas. Like I said, Tiffany is such a mover and shaker in her community. So Tiffany, one of the big things that you do in Victoria, Texas, is you do a lot of community work. Would you provide us an overview of the outreach dockets that the City of Victoria have been conducting?
Sure. So the outreach dockets is something we recently started doing here in the City of Victoria to expand upon our open access to court. Usually we have done our open dockets monthly through virtual means only. And as the last couple of months, we've realized that sometimes people can't attend those hearings virtually. And so what we've decided to do is take that to the next level and bring the court to where the people are. We go out into the community to what people may consider a safe place, local community shelter locations such as Salvation Army. We have also gone into Midcoast Family Services here in Victoria, which is a local women's shelter. We are not going, to be clear, we're not specifically going to the shelters, but rather the store or the location that they provide additional resources and services to. Sometimes those shelters in local communities can actually be unlisted to where people can't go to those particular locations. And this has allowed us to resolve more cases because at the end of the day, we want to get those cases from the open to the done. And so that's what we've been doing. We've actually had we have two under our belt as we speak, and we have two more coming up in the next couple of months, one at the end of this month, one already scheduled for next month as well.
Thanks, Tiffany. So again, let's dig a little bit deeper. What type of high-tech solutions or low-tech solutions, technology-wise, are you using when you're conducting these outreach dockets?
Yeah, so we've chosen locations that do have access to your basic needs, such as power, Wi-Fi if they have it. We do have a traveling hotspot that we bring with us so that we have a secure internet connection directly to our case management system. I do utilize Municipal Justice 9 as my case management system, and also the imaging system that goes along with that, which is the Tyler Content Manager that does help for us to be able to process those documents or those cases on the spot without having to take them back to the court and process them at a later time. I've also recently obtained a traveling printer so we can print documentation that's needed. Low-tech solution, what we've used for the last couple of months are actually triplicate forms. So when we first started this, we ended up getting just our traditional court forms like payment plan, deferrals, extension agreements, community service forms in a fashion that we could write out whatever those judges' orders are. Luckily, the last couple have only been, 8 to 10 people that have come. As we get the word out, we hope to be able to expand that even more so. We've also have, of course, copies of things like financial affidavit forms. Traditionally, the folks we're reaching out to typically can't afford to pay the fines, and so they may have to do community service or other methods of payments. And so we bring those financial affidavits so the judge can assess their ability to pay. And I feel it's been a very beneficial program, and I hope to continue to, and it's certainly not a new concept. I know other communities have done similar things, and so I have found it to be beneficial.
Yeah, that's such a huge thing. And I think that I think all of you who have some really great best practices in place can speak to fewer failures to appear because you're able to meet the people where they need to be met. That access to justice is making such a huge difference, and that the tools that, like you mentioned, content manager, Jessica is going to speak a little bit about virtual court in a second, just those different options and those tools available to meet the clients or the constituents where they need to be met. So speaking of virtual court, we're going to step on over. Thank you, Tiffany. We'll come back to you again in a second. We're going to step on over to virtual court. And Jessica, virtual court is a very important aspect of your court there in Seabrook. How has this changed the way that you've been able to provide services to your constituents in the city of Seabrook?
So for Seabrook, just to give you an understanding of how we utilize virtual court, I'm going to take us back to 2020 when the doors to our court offices were closing. And because of COVID-19 and customer service as we knew it had changed. As a court, we immediately looked for options and technology to continue our customer service. And the judge was calling defendants actually when we closed one by by telephone, handling those citations. And so we did not have any type of back cases that were not handled because we continued by telephone, but we knew that was not ideal and definitely not a long-term solution. So after about a month of telephonic hearings, I looked into options for hosting court virtually. The state had provided a platform through Zoom and YouTube, and immediately the judge was against it. At the same time, I was in contact with our sales representative with Tyler, and introduced us to a virtual court and allowed us to utilize it for free for 1 year. So it was a no-brainer. We just hopped on, and immediately the judge was excited to have an option of virtual court. Seabrook didn't expect a backlog. Well, we didn't experience a backlog. And the cases were, the only thing really that we had pending was trials, which of course we were not allowed to host anyway. So from May 2020 to currently, we've utilized virtual court continuously. And so many advances have come up with virtual court that allows us to not only view the defendants, bring on the prosecutor, it's allowing us to sign our documents electronically while we're utilizing the software. So it's been a game changer for us.
Yeah. Now, now that the doors are open, people are looking at, different options. Are you still seeing defendants back in the courtroom? How do you continue to use virtual court after, sort of a post-pandemic, if we want to call it post-pandemic? I know we're still in the middle, but as far post as we can make, as far as we can call it, how are you still providing that option? Do you still provide the option?
Yes, we do. Actually, our doors are open. We have dockets in person, but we do see defendants in the courtroom, and we're also hosting virtual court on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Virtual court works to our benefit, and it can also work to the benefit of the defendant.
Mhm.
So it depends on the approach and how you look at it. So if a defendant tells us, oh, I can't make it to court because I'm working out of state or my car broke down, well, now we set them up for a virtual hearing. And those that are not trying to use it as an excuse, they love it. The idea is taking care of their citation virtually. In addition, we're a smaller court and we share space with counsel, and we're located here in City Hall. So now we're able to host virtual court when counsel needs the chamber or when safety becomes an issue. Virtual court is definitely part of our future.
Yeah, that's great. For our audience, you can see there's a constant trend with what so far 3 of the 4 ladies have said. It's about the access to justice and really meeting the constituents to get those cases closed. As we know, we hear so many different reasons and excuses. We're giving them so many opportunities to not have to have an excuse or to not be able to show up and then have the warrant issued or anything like that. And that's no different than what Danielle is doing in Littleton, Colorado. So, I was just there with you in Colorado last week, Danielle, at your CAMCA conference, and there was a lot of conversations about recent legislative changes that require multiple defendant notifications of hearings and that sort of stuff. How are you in your court responding to that change?
Yeah, great question. Good morning, Marilyn. And actually, there's been a lot of reform in legislature over the last couple of years here in Colorado. The social justice movement has been huge here. And so there's been a lot of mandates that have been placed on courts, and they've had to respond very quickly. So we've been given a couple of months or maybe 6 months at the most in order to make these immediate changes to what we're doing and how we're serving customers. So one of the reforms that just recently passed was that we had to notify defendants at least 3 times prior to their hearing. And it was laid out very specifically that they had to be notified at least the day before and the day of. What's great is in our Tyler Municipal Justice, one of the major selling factors for us was the notify feature, because we saw a lot of value in reminding them that they had court, and hopefully that would turn into them showing up on the first time. The great piece about the feature is that you can actually notify them as often as you want. You can set it to automate, and you can also put in links in there. So what we do is we're able to send them a link to say, hey, you have court tomorrow. Here's how you sign in, right? The day of, sign in here. Here's how you join. We give them a lot of instructions, and we've created a lot of different pathways too. So with those links, we can say, if you'd like to pay for your ticket right away, click here. And then you don't even have to come in. And we give them instructions there. So it provides the ability for us to communicate with constituents in lots of different ways. But it also makes it so we can meet those state mandates and come into compliance with those quickly.
Yeah, that's huge, because when I heard that you were having to reach out at minimum 3 times, that's a lot of manual work that you would have to do or ask someone on your staff to have to go out and do. But now that you can automate those processes and already had that in place, it was like a game changer for all of y'all. You got to immediately implement and start doing that. And I think I met you, Danielle, a little over a year ago, and immediately was just taken aback by all of the things that you do there with your court. And I know that you haven't even been a client for that long. I think 2 years, maybe, if even that. But for your court, you are like out there in front. You're wanting to try the new things. You're wanting to be a part of those beta conversations. So, when you implemented Tyler Municipal Justice, what was your intention behind delivering, the 21st century services, and how did that impact your court users?
Yeah, we had talked about getting new software prior to me taking over the position. And one of the things that I was tasked with doing was actually bringing that new software on board. When we were looking at products, one of the things that I needed was a company that was going to continuously grow with the court system. That we know lots of times we get stagnant software and it doesn't continue to expand with the times. And so that was a huge thing that I was looking for, because I wanted to drastically change how we were delivering services. I had multiple people coming into my courtroom and kind of crying for different things that they needed. Just like Jessica had said before, people were missing work and had to take entire days off from work. And that could be, they don't have paid time off. So in turn, then that means that's groceries that they can't buy for their kids at home. And we're really, that's a detrimental thing to those citizens and to those users. And so we had to really rethink what our services would look like and create different pathways. So when we signed up with Tyler, a lot of the questions that I ask is, what does the website look like? Can we deliver case resolution online for people? Can they call in and make payments? How do we deliver so we can meet every user's needs? We have an older population, so there's lots of people who don't like having to pay online. But we created kiosks inside the building, right? So when they walk into our building, we can help them at the kiosk in order to make that payment. And it's still a little bit more like self-service instead of waiting in line to go talk to the judge. So what we tried to do is really create different pathways, and Tyler gave us that ability. Just like Sonia said, we could establish queues, we could track work, we could do different things to keep us on track in order to come to case resolution much faster. And what we've seen with the notifications and allowing people to pay, they're paying right up until the deadline, but they're paying and they're not having to come in court. When I used to have 100 people walking into my building on a Wednesday afternoon for traffic court, now I have 5 people that want to go in front of the judge. I have 20 that may walk in, but they can handle their case right at the counter because we've established different methodologies and different pathways for them to choose. They still have the traditional choices, and we're really just trying to say, it's your choice. But without the technology in place, we couldn't even begin to give them those choices.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think one thing that I'll say about all 4 of the panelists today is they are active and involved with any opportunity we put in front of them to touch it, to test it, to provide feedback, to help us figure out ways that we can enhance it, or what are they seeing in their communities and that sort of stuff. So for anyone that's on the call that you have felt like you're kind of out on an island, reach out to us, reach out to any of these 4 ladies to ask questions about any processes. They have established some great tools and best practices. And it's not only just them, they have a great team of staff members that really work very closely with them. So Jeff, I think we're ready to open up to any other additional questions that have started coming through.
Okay. Hello, ladies. I'm getting the screen back up there.
Okay.
Looks like we've got a few that have come in.
Okay.
How do you identify the open? This one was for how do you identify the areas of the open dockets in Victoria, Texas, and how did you market it?
Let's turn that to Tiffany.
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. And for this particular one, we wanted to focus on kind of that low income population, typically the ones that don't always make it to court or don't always have the rides to come to court. And so what I did is started to reach out to some of our local partners. So all of our community partners, we have Salvation Army, Midcoast Family Services. We have a Christ Kitchen here, which is a local location that provides meals to the public. And so those are the types of organizations I'm typically trying to work with. We actually are, the one we're doing for this month, we're going to the Victoria Mall. There is a community room out there that's available for us to utilize that we are going to for this month. But we're really trying to find those particular partners where the population that doesn't always come to court typically will go. It allows it to feel more safe, if you will. We do bring an officer for security, but we don't do the judge doesn't bring her robe. It's more of an informal court setting. We have our prosecutor that comes with us. We've actually had some local attorneys that have reached out and are representing people pro bono in the event they need it. We handle mostly traffic related violations. So a lot of ours are holding people up from getting their driver's license. They can't be productive citizens if they don't have a driver's license and are having these financial burdens. And so that's the population that we're targeting with this, but we're willing to help anybody that comes. And how we marketed it, word of mouth, anytime somebody calls and they are in a situation where they may be available or able to go to this, they're typically ones with warrants, past due tickets, defaulted payment arrangements. That's the population and the types of cases that we're focusing on. So we say word of mouth. We use text messaging notifications to send out notifications of people with active or pending warrants. We also utilize social media. We do have our own Facebook page, and our communications team has helped us with producing a video that the judge explains the purpose of the outreach docket, and that video can be updated just to include the new location information. And so that's really what we've done to promote it and market it. I hope that helps to answer that question.
Great, Tiffany, thank you. We did have one that probably would be helpful for everybody here. Wanda Shell asked, can you let us know what kind of cases the courts handle? Are they only dealing with violations or misdemeanor cases as well? Can you each kind of run through that?
Often handles misdemeanor, Class C.
Danielle?
We also handle misdemeanor, traffic, parking, and code violations for the city.
Tiffany?
Very similar as the others have mentioned, traffic related, fire marshal's code, animal control, citizen complaints. And then we also, we are a court of record. So we do have handle civil code matters and civil matters related to stolen property hearings.
And Jessica? Oh, you put yourself back on mute. There you go.
Yes, exactly the same. Class C misdemeanors, city ordinance offenses, things of that nature.
Perfect, thank you. I do have a Sierra Bickerstaff that's asked, I'm interested in the kiosk vendor.
And I think I'm the one who mentioned we put up a kiosk. I call it technically a kiosk, but it's really just an iPad. So we very nicely put an iPad up on the wall. So we found a way in a kind of space in our courthouse that we could put an iPad so other people couldn't see behind them, but we can use that to check people in, and we can use that for payments. And so we have it very isolated to just only go to those court sites.
Great, I love being creative in your ideas and thinking of how to, I mean, yes, there are vendors out there, but there's also ways to utilize technology you have now. We do have I love that the software gives all the options that are inclusive to differing needs and abilities to satisfy cases. Does anybody have anything they would like to expand on that one? More of a statement than a question, but
I'd
Jeff,
have to agree.
Exactly. And a lot like Tiffany did with the outreach dockets, we are trying to basically copy that. We saw Tiffany doing good work in Victoria, and I latched onto that. And so just like she did, we're going out to the community. One of our mottos is we're the nice, friendly Littleton court, and we want to meet people where they are. And so we do Warrant Amnesty Wednesdays, where anybody with a warrant can walk in on a Wednesday. We already have all services available there. They can call in order to take care of that ticket. But we also partner with a cafe. It's called Graceful Cafe in our community. It's just a few blocks away, but they serve unhoused people food daily at no charge. You can do in-kind work for a meal. And so we already know that that population is going to that location to eat. So we actually send our court navigator there with her laptop, and all she needed was Wi-Fi service to connect. And she can help anybody that has an outstanding citation or needs help navigating the court process or getting resources. She goes and drinks a cup of coffee or has breakfast, interacts with the clients that are there, and is just trying to provide support. So we're just trying to meet them where they're at too. So that's just another good example of having a laptop and being mobile is huge.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Danielle. I think the only additional thing that I'll add is that, as you can see, each of these courts vary in sizes. So it's not the supersized courts like Victoria, Texas, that's doing all of these things. These are courts like Jessica, who's got less than 15,000 population. So, take these ideas and then fit them to what best suits your court. There's a lot of great opportunities there to really hone in on what works best for you and your city.
Great, Harlan. I did want to catch those that may have been here after the initial discussion. Make sure that you do type in any questions in the question and answer box. As you can see, we are answering these live, and we'll continue to feed our panelists questions. So if you have something on your mind, please toss it in there. I will be going through this as we progress for the next 30 minutes or so. There was a comment that Littleton went live during, I would assume, the pandemic, since it went remotely. So they went live remote. So if you have any thing that you would like to add on that process?
What COVID taught us is that we can be nimble and we can learn to work together even if we're not in the same room. Tyler has some really great business analysts, and they actually walked us through the entire process. We never got to meet in person, unfortunately, just via screens, but modern technology has allowed us to be able to do all the same tasks remotely. And one of the key things I think that we learned too was it allowed our workers to also work remotely, right? So not only the technology companies, but my court is also hybrid. So we allow some of our court staff to work from home and deliver court services. And it's still very functional and it works perfectly. And it gives them that convenience in order to have flexibility.
Yeah, Jeff, if you don't mind if I insert something
Absolutely.
real quick. I think that while Danielle was bringing that up, I think it's good to point out Danielle is one of our beta courts as we're moving our product to the cloud. So Danielle, let's talk about, why you chose to be a hosted court and your experience so far with what you've seen us designing and your input in regards to the cloud.
Yeah, we decided to be a hosted court when we were looking for applications. One of the things that I recognized, and I had worked in other city departments before too, was that we didn't have an IT resource that was tied to the courts. We didn't have somebody that helped us with our software daily, who was doing all of our updates all the time. They had to be reminded. And it's just because our IT team is smaller. And so when I talked with IT about what we could do moving forward, we talked about having a hosted site because it provided more cybersecurity, right? With more threats happening daily to courts and local cities, that was a real need for us, that we didn't have to manage those servers. Then the second piece was that those updates and that service would be directly provided by the software company, and Tyler provided that hosted environment. So that was a huge selling point for us. Once we went hosted, what it allowed us to do was also be included in any of their new updates, like the beta test site. And we were asked to join, which was exciting for us because I like to think outside the box and think about our user experience as well. And so when they said they were testing this with judges first, that was a huge selling point for me. My judge, like many other judge, judges was not interested in typing on a computer, right? He wanted to interact with people still, but he didn't want to have to click the buttons. He felt like it would slow the process down. But what we quickly got him to do was realize that the technology, if he was using it in court, that the entire process went faster. And then we didn't have all these waiting periods of trying to catch up at the end and get people paperwork later. And so as he started using it, it became great, which allowed us to be a beta test site and let him, the judge, actually decide what needed to be fixed, how many clicks were going, what he needed to see fast in order to deliver a better product. And so being a beta test site actually allows our court to determine the future of what we need to use. And so it was an easy win for us to say, yeah, we want to be a beta test site because we get to give direct input into what's going to be delivered next.
Thanks, Danielle. Thank you, Jeff.
That was great because it helped me lead into the next one for Sonia. Jessica mentioned how she's still using virtual court. How does the city of Allen still plan to utilize virtual court?
Virtual court is here to stay for us. One of the benefits of having that option for our defendants is it's not only for our defendants, it's for our defense attorneys. So they use virtual court. All of our attorney dockets are handled that way. Our pre-trials, our prosecutor is tech savvy. She loves having that option of not having a bunch of defendants in the courtroom, and she's able to share police reports or videos that she needs to with the updated version of virtual court that we have. But we utilize it in every aspect that's possible for any type of hearing. We have code dockets and animal control. So we handle those, and we just connect our code enforcement officers, our defendant, our prosecutor and judge, and we have a hearing. It's fast, it's easy, and we can do everything without having traffic and people missing appointments or not able to come in. So we can adjudicate these cases quickly and go on to the next one.
Jessica, she mentioned people not being able to come in. In the past, your court had issued many warrants. Can you tell us why this would happen and what has changed?
So in the past, we would issue quite a bit of warrants. A lot of people didn't show, like we've discussed before, like 50% of your docket doesn't really show, honestly. But with virtual court, when you give them options, you give them the ability to bring down your warrants. So what that means for your staff is that's less work for them to process. Anyone that works in a court knows that a warrant is not just quickly you add a fee and have a judge sign a document. There's a lot that entails to a warrant. And then you're also, when you issue a lot of warrants, it's tying that defendant down even further if they're having problems even initially paying their citation. So giving them more options equals less warrants.
Jessica Haggard had asked, can someone explain the notification feature on the software? How much for each call?
Danielle, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So Tyler actually offers a case resolution bundle. And so notification is part of that bundle. And so you get a lot of really cool features. What I like is what they've done is tried to say, hey, here's all the things that work together well. And you can buy certain options. Let's say you have certain things and you just need these add-on options. They do that really well in order to help you navigate what you need and what will work for your court. So it's part of it, a bundle option. And so you get multiple things with that option. So there is not a fee per call anymore. It is just you pay one time that flat fee for that bundle, and as many calls as you want to make, you get to make. And it does text messages, phone calls, and emails if you have all of that information in for the defendant. So we've really tried to push, like Jessica was saying, front loading work, right? So instead of doing the work after, we're front loading the work, and it starts with the officer. So when he writes the citation, right, there's a lot of education that goes into why we need the phone number, why we need a valid address, even if it's not their address, maybe it's a family member's address for an unhoused person, because we need to be able to give them correspondence. And in our community, a lot of unhoused people can actually have mailing addresses at some of the nonprofit organizations, and they give them mailboxes in order to be able to get mail. So we already have those connections built, plus getting an email address. So when that information comes straight into our Tyler municipal justice system, then we already have that. So when we say notify, it's going out to really good phone numbers, email addresses, and houses. And we still do all three methods. So in our mind, it's better to over communicate than to under communicate. So we text, we call, we email, and we still send what we call snail mail.
I love that. I love, Jeff, I'm going to ask Tiffany to add to that as well. And I love that you said over communicate, because folks that know me know that I am hassling y'all with more information than what you bargained for. But Tiffany, would you add to that as well?
Sure. I wanted to add a little bit to the case resolution bundle conversation, because not only does it include the notification, but it also includes Insight, your online payment platform, your interactive voice response system for phone payments, which has been a lifesaver. It takes that liability and burden off of us from taking those phone payments. And then additionally, with the Notify, I mean, we use it for everything. We use it for court reminders, payment reminders, late notice reminders, and it's really been a true asset to us. We do what's called the customer fee model. I say it that way because it sounds better than you're having to pay for our website. But the customer or the defendant pays a fee on their end, and so it comes at no cost to us for that reason. When they set up defensive driving online or make their payments, they pay an additional fee that's associated with that. That helps to offset that cost for us. So that's the model we utilize in the city of Victoria.
We have a couple more that I'm going to continue on the Notify, but I do want to let everybody know, please, there will be the slide on the screen for the QR code that'll also take you for more information on all these tools that they've discussed today. But the one question was, what is meant by hosted site? Marlon or
Danielle is the queen. I'm gonna let her explain it, because she could explain it better than I could.
So traditionally, when you're an on-premise, and this is just plain language, and I am a nerd, my degree's in math and computer science, so I totally understood what this meant. But traditionally, when you're an on-premise location, what it means is you have a server in a server room at your building or at a different building, and it's connected to your network at your city. So that would be like an on-premise or on-site version, and they download the software onto there. Instead, when you're hosted, they have these virtual servers that AWS hosts. And so these virtual servers are out in the cloud, right? And so you connect to that cloud every time you're connecting to municipal justice. So those are all maintained by Tyler. Whereas when it's on site, you have to maintain those, you have to fix them when they go down, you have to upgrade those, and sometimes then you have to buy new ones, and that's a hefty expense for your IT.
Thank you, Danielle. See, you said it perfectly. Thank you.
So there's two more questions on the Notify, which I should have asked before since we were on that topic, but we'll go back to it. Does Notify have an option to schedule different sets of text messages? Let's say you want to remind them for payments 10 days before, and then again 1 day before. Is there a way to set this up in one single text set up rather than setting up two different ones?
Yeah, so what's really great about the Notify is you can actually create different notifications according to what you want to do, and you can schedule them on a routine basis. So we do some of our things, some of our notifications are manual and some are automated, right? Like we want this to go out every Friday. What we've learned is there's also analytics behind it. And so it will tell you the best day to send, like you're sending these notifications on Friday at 4 o'clock, and that's when everybody's paying. or you're sending these notifications the day before at 4 o'clock and everybody's paying. So we pay attention to those analytics and try to send out our notifications accordingly to when we're going to have the most success. And so you can set up multiple notifications. It's almost like a copy the script, and you can have 25 of them and they can all be different scripts. Like, here's how you check in, here's how you pay, you can pay or come in. And so we have multiples of those according to what is the message we want to send you. And then you can say, according to this court case type or the status that it's in, then you can choose different kinds of cases.
I love it. And I know that Sonia, Jessica, Tiffany, all of them could answer. And I think it's so important that we continue to let them answer the questions, because you get to understand how each of the courts are using it. I can tell you from my perspective of being part of Tyler, but it's different when you're hands-on and you're including it for each of your days. So I appreciate y'all answering these questions.
Well, let's have one of you answer. The next one, which comes as does the defendant have to opt in to receive a phone call?
No. We advise them here in Alvin that whatever they share, their phone number, they'll get courtesy reminders. So they opt in we've never had any issues. They're grateful for reminders when we do send out notifications. We do a lot by text, because a lot more of our defendants will read a text versus answering their phone. So we've gotten a high success rate with sending text messages out to. We also send messages out to our defense attorneys. They like the reminders that, hey, you have an upcoming trial, don't forget.
So speaking of defense attorneys, there's a question: how do attorneys submit motions to virtual courts? Via email, question mark?
Yeah. Tiffany, let's turn that one to you first, and then I think Jessica may have something to add extra to that too.
Sure. So we actually recently launched the Tyler offers an attorney e-file portal, if you will, that goes along with the online records search platform, which we utilize as well. And so we have launched that to allow attorneys to file motions. They can also, once they are associated with the case, then they can view their cases online through that portal as well. So it's beneficial for them, not just to file motions, but to also keep up to date with where their case is and what status it's in.
That's good to know. I actually did not know about that, Marlon.
Oh,
So in our virtual court, the motions are basically filed by email. So, and we receive them, and we have scanners as well. We scan them in. So we are paper light. So therefore, most of our documents are in Tyler Content Manager as well. And anything that gets mailed or emailed to us, we save it as a PDF and scan and transfer or scan it over, whatever we need to do.
well, Jessica, I think Paul Rex will be calling you this afternoon. One, Paul, call Jessica. And two, I think a huge thing about those portals and everything is that takes down those phone calls of those defense attorneys and those folks calling you constantly. Point them to where they can go find out that information themselves, and you're not having to prepare file jackets and have things waiting for them. They can get to what they need wherever they are to access it. So again, Paul Rex, Jessica, this afternoon. All right, back to you, Jeff.
Well, actually, speaking of Paul Rex, he had submitted a statement which will actually work on reducing the court's staff's work. It says Tyler will provide the 800 number for the IVR payment, so your staff is not doing that work. So we'll give Paul a little shout out there on his statement he's sharing with you. But as to an actual question, another question, Christine McMain says, how do you establish queues?
Ooh, Sonia, you want to take that one?
Yes, ma'am. Let me just reiterate, queues are amazing. Whatever software you have, contact your vendor. But as far as Tyler products go, you can set those and utilize those to the fullest within the software. We were Paperless, then we converted over to paperless environment. If we didn't have queues, it would be a little bit more difficult to track cases. So those queues are key for us. So, with our standing orders, our judge has to review anything the clerks do at the court window or anything that's done online. So pushing that case over to what we call queues, and we have each clerk has a queue, the judge has a queue, prosecutor has a queue. We put that case into that electronic format. The judge can go in, he can be at his office, he can log into Tyler, he can sit there, review warrants, whatever's in the warrant queue, whatever the clerks have done at the window, he can pull those cases up live as soon as it hits that queue, review it. If it's approved, then he can finalize it, and then we can move on to the next process. So it only takes seconds to set up, and you can use it for anything you need within your court.
Yeah, queues are huge. Queues are such an important factor. I think the best way to explain it, if you don't know what the queues are, it's basically having the little inboxes on your desk, and everything that you put in for those individuals are done electronically. So you can take that paper off your desk and not have to have someone come grab everything and put it there. So you have access to those electronic soft copies, so that all of the queues are set up and you know exactly what they're working on and who has access to what documents or anything they need to have access to. Thanks, Sonia.
Yeah, Marlon, can I say one thing about the queues too?
Of course.
Other really cool feature about once you get those set up, like Sonia said, and you know who's doing work on them, you can also do batch work. So for things like collections, where you have all these parking citations and they're all going to go into a default judgment, you can then say all of them go into default judgment, assess the fees, and then send them to collections. And that happens by saying select all, right? And then it goes through. And so you took a process that you used to have to touch a case every single one to do something, or the judge would have to put a stamp on every single one. Instead, now he can do it as a batch. And so that allows work to move quickly when you're doing batches like that.
Oh, I miss those days. I've been on Tyler for many, many years and changed to a state mandated one. And that's one of the biggest features I miss, I will tell you. Biggest features I miss. I got a question from Wanda Shell. Do any of the judges offer diversion or reductions in fines? If so, how can those be put in place if someone opts to use your kiosk online services to pay? Are you manually adjusting if they're eligible?
I can answer that one. That's similar to our program with the outreach dockets. For us, we do have to process that case first. And so that through the Tyler product is using a macro to get that case ready for any kind of payment, whether it's a waiver, they were in jail, or just a reduction of that. We do process it first and get it into a status that's eligible for online payment. And then they can pay it through the various systems like online or through kiosk or by phone.
And on top of what Tiffany does, so we also do the same thing, but what we do at the beginning of the process, like I said, front loading the work, when the prosecutor is reviewing each of our cases electronically, so our prosecutors have access to Tyler as well. We created them a user, and they can see different things than we see, and then a lot of the same things. And so they actually have their own macros and their own queues in there, and they work inside the same system we do. So it's one-stop shop. But what they do is when they click a macro or they decide that this can go through diversion, then it automatically does that work. We have the macro set up that it will automatically reduce fines and fees, and will take them down a different path and allow them to pay online. So the clerk never even has to touch it.
Great. As we round out, there are a couple shout outs to you folks. One, they love hearing all the ideas and input from other clerks, very valuable. So thanks again for Tyler for hosting this opportunity, and especially sharing the municipal courts. It's one thing that I think has really hit a lot of folks. We've had a lot of participants today, and we've had a lot of people that have stayed on, so it's been great. Another one that used to be in Texas misses you guys and thinks that they're well ahead of others, so they want to hear about other contributions. But I do want to say, Marlon, as your role in the client success manager, what advice would you have to offer these courts as we wrap up here?
Yeah, of course. One, as you can see, I brought some superstar rock stars, but I just want to say, please know that this is only 4 out of close to 1,000 other courts that we work with on the municipal court, municipal justice side. So there's a lot of really, really smart people. And the thing that I always tell folks is that you are not alone. These folks are readily available. They want to share that experience with you all. And there's never a time that you should feel stuck. As you can tell, just with these 4 folks that are super rock stars, Jessica said, oh, I didn't know about that. So even the rock stars still are learning great things. So that just goes to show you, it's important to stay really close to one another. Hop in there, pick up the phone and call the folks, call me. A lot of the panelists today, they offered what's happening in their world at a very high 30,000 foot level. If you want to know any more specifics that we discussed today, or you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly. I know a lot of smart people, as you can tell, and I lean on my smart people all of the time. So that's one of the biggest things that I say with this world. Do not stay challenged, because there's opportunities and people available to talk you through to get you to the other side.
Marlon, do you mind if I bring up a quick point for Alvin?
Sure.
So if you're on the fence about maybe taking your court to a paper light or paperless environment, for Alvin, we have customized case files, which cost in each budget year before we went paperless, or paperlight, then paperless, we were spending about $4,000 to $5,000 a year. So over time, within a 5-year period, I've saved over $20,000 in my budget on what we would spend on those case files and all the paper and, you know, time. So we're saving money in the long run. So maybe if there's a little cost up front, in the back end, you're going to save a lot of money in your budget.
Not to mention, you're also saving on storage.
Yes.
Space in your office.
Yes.
And I eliminated offsite storage, you know, within a couple of years of going Paperlite. So it's definitely a good point, Sonia.
Yeah. Thanks, Sonia.
You're welcome.
Well, as we round out today, I do want to let a few folks know, for those NACM members and those non-NACM members, we do have our upcoming annual conference coming in July 10th through the 14th. Again, you'll see lots of Tyler representation there, as they are a major sponsor of our conferences as well. So if you want to learn more, please join us in Milwaukee, July 10th through the 14th. If that's a little too soon, then join us February in Minneapolis or next year in Tampa. If you are not a NACM member, please consider joining. For non-NACM members who are participating in today's webinar, we encourage you to consider membership. NACM is the largest organization of court management professionals in the world. In addition to providing quality education at conferences, with membership, you also have access to podcasts, webinars, publications, guides, and other materials that inform members about the best practices, innovations, and issues affecting courts today. NACM also provides a forum for working with other colleagues in the profession to improve the administration of justice. So join today at nacmnet.org. Information about NACM and more can be found at nacmnet.org. Information about Tyler Technologies can be found at tylertech.com. A recording of today's webinar will be available on NACM's website via the member portal. On behalf of the National Association of Court Management and Tyler Technologies, I want to thank you all for attending. I definitely want to thank Marlon for hosting such a great panel with Sonia, Tiffany, Jessica, and Danielle. So I appreciate you all joining us, and Have a great afternoon and evening. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everyone.